Now, while you're standing, let me just give you one little tidbit about imagination. I know a lot of you saw the video that Gil and I did recently. So you know this word imagination is a really powerful word, and it's not what you think it is. So words change meaning over time and culture. They tend to not mean the same thing they once did, and so many words have origins that are so powerful and you don't even realize it. In fact, a large percentage, let's not exaggerate, a large percentage of the words you use every day have astronomical origins. Did you know that? When you talk about someone's disposition, that used to mean how the planets were relating to them, the position of the planets. When you say you understand something, that meant to stand under the canopy of the heavens, which was considered the source of wisdom. When you say something is a disaster, do you know that means the stars are against us? Dis against aster, star. The stars are against us. There's so many words. It's just a smattering. There are so many words that have heavenly or astronomical origins. And you use them every day, but so much is sort of lost through time. Now, imagination has a story kind of like this. It's not been around for a long time. Did you know that? The word imagination is a relatively new word, relatively in the history of language, okay? So we're talking like 1,000, 1,500 years new. But what the word used to be, what we only knew it as, was the word inspiration. That's where imagination came from. Inspiration is where our word possession comes from. To be inspired is to have a spirit from the outside come into you, to your inside. It's where we get the idea of you are possessed. Same word as you are inspired. I know you're like, really? Yes, okay. It's the same connotation. Obviously, there was a bad form of having a spirit come into you. There was also a really good one. And you see this throughout the Old Testament of someone being filled, or, you get the idea. Holy Spirit came upon them, So you have this word inspired, to be inspirited, to have a spirit come into you. There is a moment where that starts to shift. And of course, it happens after Pentecost. It doesn't occur to mankind that amazing things can happen from something that's inside them. Prior to this moment, anything which we would call historically the genius of man, the moments where mankind does things that are really extra awesome, the assumption was always they got it from a spirit outside of them that came into them and inspired them to then do something really awesome. You're following? Okay, that's old inspiration. Once we have this moment of Pentecost, there is an inspiration that then stays and doesn't leave. You see what I'm saying? A spirit from the outside came in and remained. And over slowly and gradually, but over that slowly and gradual process, we start to change the way we think about how man is doing the awesome things that they're doing. And it starts to change from something's on the outside coming into, it's coming from within me. Okay? So then the genius of man is not outside, it's within, and it's just a matter of uncorking it to come out. So the word has to change from being possessed to something coming up from in here. And that birthed the word imagination. That it came from within you. It's your imagination that then results in the genius of man. You still good? Yeah. That word imagination then branches at a point in history not that long ago. And one branch keeps the original meaning of the word, the genius of man that comes from within, not from without, and the ability to see and image things that aren't necessarily in this realm. Then the other branch of the word tree imagination goes down here to mean flights of fancy. Okay, you still there? Mm-hmm. Flights of fancy. That's what you do when you're in the car driving home from work and you're remembering a conversation you had at work and you can see the whole thing play out. That's a flight of fancy. That's your imagination. You can see it. You can remember the sound of the voices. You can probably even remember smells. All of those things. That's the flights of fancy. Then over time, and this happened probably because of the scientific revolution and the technological revolution of just the last couple hundred years, we eliminated this branch of the word tree and just kept this one, which is flights of fancy. So now whenever I say that we're about to use your imagination, you have to then get over that hurdle of, now just wait a minute. I'm not just going to use my imagination. It's not going to mean anything. How do I know that it's from the Lord? And you have to realize when you're saying that, you're saying, I want to go back to old inspiration. I want some spirit out here to smack me with the experience. You're going backwards in time in the evolution of human consciousness and the evolution of man. You're going back in time to old inspiration of being possessed by something, as opposed to realizing that this moment of Pentecost changed it. And over time we got to this place where we realized the amazing things are coming from a source inside you. So when people are experiencing the heavens with their imagination, a vast majority of the time, myself included, you're going, I'm just making this stuff up. You are making it up. That's how you know you're doing it right.
That's good.
I know you're like, now, I know, right? Explain that again, Christopher. If it's coming from outside of you, I would question the source. Where's the Holy Spirit? It's in you. It remained. It came in and and we'll get over the it probably tomorrow. And remained. And remained. So when you're going, Chris, I'm just making this stuff up. You're doing it correctly because it should feel like it's coming from you. If it's not coming from you, we should really test the stuff, and test it anyway. Be a good human, test the fruit. But it should feel like it's originating inside your person and not from an outside source. So your imagination, this is, if Paul was writing his letters today, I have no doubt when he said, I pray that the eyes of your heart would be illuminated, he didn't have the word imagination. Did you know that? He did not have the word imagination. It's not in his vernacular. Had he written that today, he would have said, and I think I can say this with some degree of confidence, I pray that your imagination would be illuminated so that you can see, all these things in the kingdom. You still there? How are you going to do anything in the heavenly realm? Through imagination. And I know it's a hurdle, but you're going to have to get over it and research what I told you. Don't just take my word for it. I read a book about the origin of these English words written by Owen Barfield, because nerd moment, okay? And he had a whole section devoted to just this word inspiration and how it became imagination. Just keep that in mind. You grew up knowing flights of fancy, but that's not what the word is. And imagination in our culture is tolerated when you're under 5 and over 70, And in between there, John, you good?
Dream on, brother.
And in between those ages, you are sort of required to become mechanical and fit into the cogs and the gears and the wheels and pay your taxes and be productive, And don't worry about that stuff until we don't need you to produce.